Alright, we are gonna analyze Elizabeth Holmes' body language. So we look out for some of the prominent gestures. And of course, the first thing you'll usually notice about her, what is it? That's right, eye contact. But the thing is this, a lot of body language experts have analyzed and concluded that there's a high chance that it's due to the constant non-blinking, constant stare down, a forced stare to look more authoritative, and then it comes across as forced and rehearsed. That makes her come across as dishonest or hiding something or uncomfortable. Well, I disagree with that because when I look at various clips of her past interviews, and that can date back to as long as I think 2013, so like 12 years ago, she has always maintained that type of eye contact. That means the stare down, eyeball to eyeball, or maybe she really is looking for eyeball to your nose or the third eye point. But the thing is, if someone has that particular gesture or posture or any mannerisms, and that's their usual way of interacting, you cannot use that to conclude or to decode a particular gesture or a behavior or an outcome. The reason why is because that's how they've always communicated, whether they are telling a lie or not. So if you're going to use that particular gesture alone, you might come across as not really accurate because you might not be looking at the other gestures in tandem. So you got to look at it as a cluster, not just one particular gesture. So let's just look at the entire gestures and highlight some of the things that maybe she might be using that we can use to improve our own communication skills, and some things that we should avoid.
To run comprehensive laboratory tests from a tiny sample or a few drops of blood.
Again, we always start with hand gestures, tilting of the head, you're open, eye contact, she's looking at somebody in the crowd, and then how you want to build rapport with a large audience, a large group of people, looking at one for having eye contact with someone in the center for 2, 3 to 5 seconds. After that, proceed to someone on the left or right, depending on where on the stage you are standing. So you can just shift your position and change your eye contact accordingly. Now notice the hand gestures, open palm gesture, always honest, upfront, at the same time authoritative to a certain degree. Or the authoritative overly will be pointing, remember? So open palm gesture, thumbs down, coming across as maybe making a particular point. Sorry, palms down. So let's have a look. Eye contact. You notice about the eye contact that I was mentioning about at the beginning? She has always maintained that less blinking, stare down kind of look. Generally, we blink about 15 to 20 times per minute. But I did another video of Charles Manson, and he had a similar kind of eye contact where he tries to hypnotize and puts his point across by making you gaze into his eyes to really follow what he has to say. So this sense for Elizabeth Holmes is her way of putting ideas across. Maybe she's been brought up that way, and the natural body mechanisms and mannerisms is that way. I mean, she always maintained that particular large eyes because eyelids open up and then just staring straight at you. Let's have a look.
To eliminate the tubes and tubes of blood that traditionally have to be drawn from an arm, and replaced it with the nanotainer.
The youngest billionaire in the world.
Okay, she did something very good about the presentation, the TED Talk. Now, whenever you have any kind of presentation and you want to capture the audience attention, one very good way to do it is to have a prop. Maybe it's just something tiny or an action to represent that particular prop. So So she took out that capsule, or like a mini tiniest test tube where you got to put the drop of blood. So he shows it up. So the audience immediately is captivated by what this object's about. You want to listen to what she has to say further. Let's have a look. Notice, since we are at this freeze frame here, head tilt to one side. When you're tilting your head to one side, it's good in a certain way. So if you overdo it, of course, you exaggerated actions like that. You know, maybe it could be your natural way of speaking, but you tilt your head to one side, shows that you're listening to what the other person has to say. And smile, different types of smile. Remember, Duchenne means grinning from ear to ear, and you have that crow's feet. That means you're really laughing or smiling genuinely. With the other side, you have the plastic smile. People call it Pan Am smile, but I just call it plastic smile because that's what it is. Smile for dolls. Fake smile, in other words. So this one, let's have a look. Smiling, but like more of like a forced kind of smile. Polite. I like to classify this as a polite smile. Let's further.
Is that heady when you hear that?
You know, it's not what matters. What matters is how well we do in trying to make people's lives better.
You founded this company 12 years ago, right? Tell them how old you were.
I was 19.
At the position of seating, when you cross your feet or your arms, it's generally a defensive gesture. However, remember what I said earlier on. This could be just a very comfortable way of sitting for her. So you do not really use that to conclude that she's uncomfortable. It could be, but then again, it could be just a comfortable sitting position. So how can we make a more genuine or more accurate gauge? By looking at the other gestures. Her tone of voice, I believe, have changed over the years. Previously it was a bit higher pitch and now it's a bit deeper. Whether it's through force or just a change, or maybe, I'm not sure if there's any kind of medical condition, but it's deeper. When you have a deeper voice, you come across as more authoritative and more genuine than someone with a higher pitch. That's just a natural kind of people's perception and people's view. So you do not really take that alone. You can just, if let's say you naturally have a higher pitch voice, you want to come across as confident, then you use the confident gestures like eye contact, eyeball to your third eye, and then open palm gestures and nodding of your head. Less fillers, like less fillers, because when you have fillers, you show a little bit of unsureness, lack of confidence, a bit of stress.
So, but Theranos also.
She was holding on to her feet. Whenever you're holding on to something like a rostrum, your feet can be a gesture of feeling a bit of discomfort.
As critics, and just this morning, the Wall Street Journal ran a pretty.
First they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world.
You've said that the journal's reporting on Theranos has been erroneous.
Okay, notice something, one key thing that she did there. She shifted her position just when he was asking a question that made her feel uncomfortable. Let's have a look at that again.
First they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world.
You've said that the journal's reporting on Theranos has been erroneous.
Okay,
and,
he mentions that the report on Theranos was erroneous. So she shifted her position to get ready to give a response. And the good thing about it is that she's leaning forward. Perhaps she's even mirroring what the interviewer is doing. So he's leaning forward. You notice that there's similarities. When you mirror someone, there's a very strong chance that you are building a rapport well with them, or at least you are coming across as building rapport. Maybe you might not have anything in common with them at all, but just the fact that you're mirroring their gestures and the tone, volume, and pitch of voice will make the other party think that, hey, I have something in common with this person. Maybe she feels that that might be a way to make the interviewer maybe be a bit more forgiving, or asking easier questions, or whatever the
Founded in
feels like
baseless assertions. The question the community has is, does this work? If you believe that it does, I'd like to hear you say
I
that.
know it does. I actually don't think that our
you
value.
notice when he asked that particular question,
The question the
after
community
asking the
has
question, before answering, she felt a little bit uncomfortable. And how do we know this? By the three gestures. She holding on, her feet holding on, hands holding on to the knees. And before answering the question, usually it's like a cold stare, eyes straight up, eyeball to eyeball, or eyeball to forehead. But this time round, there was a quick, sudden flash of blinkingness. So blinking. So micro expressions change. So you have a look.
Does this work? If you believe that it does, I'd like to hear you say
I
that.
know it does.
No,
I actually don't
I know
think
it does.
that our valuation is what matters here. What matters here is the integrity of our data.
As you know, Fortune went all in on the Theranos story. I think we were the first magazine to put you on the cover. So it was kind of a shock to us to discover a few weeks ago that you're really only doing one test with that pinprick.
We went through these in detail, and we've seen that.
Okay, she shows a little bit of tension there. How do we know? Three gestures again. Number one, the eyebrows frown a little bit when you are a bit tensed up. It's just a very slight subtle. Okay, it's not, for Elizabeth Holmes' case, it's not as obvious as others that I've observed. But you can see slight frown. Still, she maintained the open palm gesture, but it seems a little bit forced. How do I know this? Not to loosen up. In this way, her arms are by her side, squeezed by her side, and her legs are still crossed, heads leaning forward, eyes not, I can't see clearly from this angle, but it looked like it's not really focused on the interviewer that much yet. Maybe he has just a slight glance away from the interviewer, and then it shows that it's a bit of discomfort there. And the voice also a lower.
What has been written is not accurate.
There's this man who goes by the initials RC right now in Arizona, who is suggesting that the lab results that he got from Theranos were not accurate, and it led to him having a heart attack. Based on what you know, is it possible that what he's saying is true?
I'm not the lab director, and so...
I know, but you're the CEO and founder of the company. I mean, this is as serious as it gets.
What I know is that I've put...
Something here to take note of. Look at her lips, like it was a pursing, and there's like a little bit of a smirk or smile after asking the question and listening to the question. Let's have a look.
Best people in place to be able to... What I know is that
I mean, this is as serious as it gets.
What I know is that I've put the best people in place to be able to...
The smile, there's just like a slight smirk and smile. Eye contact still there, but there was a little bit more blinking than her usual straight up stare. So it shows that she's a bit uncomfortable. Voice not as deep and not as confident. The volume not as confident as when she was doing the tech talk. It's a bit no quivering, but still not as firm and not as precise and not as confident.
To investigate every aspect of this and ensure that we meet the quality standards that we hold ourselves to, and I know they're doing that.
Okay, but were you the decision maker on behalf of Theranos, and did you sign the Walgreens contract or the amendment?
I did. I signed many.
Yeah, there we see the nervousness as well. I starting not really ready to answer the question, not as confident as she was during the presentation of the TED Talk.
The Walgreens agreements, I don't know if I signed all of them. And yes, I mean, I'm the CEO. I'm the ultimate decision maker for the company.
Listen as Holmes repeatedly takes the fifth on advice of counsel while being deposed by an attorney representing late-stage Theranos investors.
Are you going to follow his instruction not to answer?
Yes, I'm going to follow my counsel's instruction. I'm going to follow my counsel's instructions. I'm following his instruction.
Same instruction.
All right, so in times of nervousness, we usually try to form like a barrier between us and the other party or parties. So we usually have like a like a barrier, like you feel more comfortable with the rostrum between you than and another person, than without any particular obstacle, the so-called obstacle like a table or rostrum or a bag. And when you're nervous, you take a particular action before speaking. In this case, you either touch your nose or you even take a sip of water. It can be a sign of nervousness. Of course, it could also be a sign that you're thirsty. So remember to look at gestures as a cluster. That means 2 or more gestures in order to form a more accurate gauge of decoding how a person feels or what they're trying to say, really, not just the words, but their actions.
Same response.
Tonight, Elizabeth Holmes is now a convicted.
So the main thing that we can learn from Elizabeth Holmes' gestures, most eye contacts can be forced upon, but generally when you have eyeball to eyeball, you come across as very aggressive. And for guys, if you're doing it for a woman, creepy even. So you always have eyeball to third eye point or eyeball to eyeball for 3 to 5 seconds and then glance. You don't glance straight away off. So it makes you come across as untrustworthy. So a good way to put confident but yet polite eye contact is either your eyeball to the person's forehead or the nose. And when you are breaking the eye contact, if you're eyeball to eyeball, look to the side of the person. Don't look down or up or anywhere else. So you just break it by looking to the side. Just maybe the ear or just beyond the ear. So that's one tip for you. Thank you very much for watching.